Tomorrow 18-hour special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. This is the only daily MSME platform in the country, a show where you can voice your concerns and get answers to all your queries directly from our team of experts. We understand the issues that you, the MSME entrepreneur, face, and the show aims to bring you the most relevant and the most updated information on everything related to your businesses. Tonight on our Insight segment, a conversation with Shruti Shubulal and featuring a conversation with Ashok Soota that was done earlier by Startup Central. As we wind down the year, hospitality will continue being in focus going forward, and today we're featuring a young entrepreneur in the hospitality space. She may be one of the richest young women in India at the moment, all thanks to her stake in IT giant Infosys. But Shruti Shubulal, daughter of former Infosys co-founder S.D. Shubulal, chose to not have a venture in the IT space but follow her passion and carve her own niche instead. I spoke to her about her venture, about tips for other young entrepreneurs like herself. Listen in. Maybe I can start by talking to you about what your own experience has been like as perhaps a first-time entrepreneur, and what you would want to talk to our viewers about maybe some of the key challenges you faced, and therefore what your key learnings have been and what advice you'd have.
Sure. So I've been an entrepreneur for some time now, I suppose. I started off in the finance industry in New York, and then further along moved to Bangalore and started a restaurant company in 2008. The Tamara was formed a few years later, and I have been in various positions within the company over the last few years. And of course, the Tamara is a hospitality company which currently owns and operates 4 different properties, 3 in India and 1 in Germany. So, you know, just to talk a little bit about the hospitality industry, I guess, like some of the key challenges that we've been facing is that, you know, there's this question of sustainability. There's a question of this changing customer, the changing customer really, and there's this, you know, there's attrition, which has always really been the perennial problem within the hospitality industry. So I guess firstly, I'll actually talk about the changing customer base. You know, there's a rapidly growing middle class with increased disposable income, and we as an industry must start talking about how to cater to this group. Digitization is a beautiful thing. It's really opened up our businesses to those who would not have access to them before, but it also means that our guests are far more discerning than they were before. You know, as far as attrition goes, this, like I said, has been the perennial problem. And a lot of good work is being done in this, but as organizations are starting to think about, you know, better practices and how we can address this, we must start sharing that knowledge with each other. Sure. And lastly, you know, the question of sustainability, which is something that is very deeply important to me, actually, personally. You know, we as an industry need to stop just talking about responsible tourism, and we need to start thinking about how we can plan and execute based on that principle.
I'll come back to the bit that you were talking about attrition, but I first up want to talk to you about was there a single point at which you decided that you were not going to join, say, for example, Infosys or go into the IT industry, but to go out on your own, do your own thing? And how has that perhaps helped you in your growth as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So you know, IT wasn't really on the cards for me. It wasn't something that I was at all interested in as an industry. It wasn't, you know, it just wasn't really, it wasn't for me. And I always knew that, you know, like when I was doing internships, it was mostly in finance. And I think there was a deep sort of itch to be an entrepreneur from a fairly young age. So, you know, I wanted to do something on my own, and hospitality really became my kind of passion, I discovered that it was my passion rather. So that's kind of the way that I got into it.
Okay, so has it also been an enabling environment for you in terms of being able to choose your own path? And the reason I'm asking you this is that on the Leaders of Tomorrow, we're doing a series of interviews with the 2nd and 3rd generation of companies which are family run or family owned or family managed in some sense. And I'd like you to talk to our viewers about whether you think there's enough concept of succession planning in India and how critical it is for the 1st or the 2nd generation to give further generations the freedom to really do their own thing and therefore grow the business.
So, I mean, for me, personal experience, I was incredibly empowered in terms of making my own decisions, career-wise. And I'm so glad that I had that opportunity because, of course, I think in traditional businesses, family businesses, there has been this implication that the next generation must take it on. But in my case, I was given the opportunity to do really whatever I felt passionate about, and I think that is required. That that a bit of free range is required. At the same time, family businesses are the ones that have lasted the longest in this world. They play an incredible important part in our history, and generations and generations of people that feel this kind of connection to their businesses. That's what really makes them succeed so well. I hope that my business is, of course, kind of passed on, but I want to maintain a very strict professionalism. I want to maintain strict professionalism and governance in doing so. And I think that was the expectation that was laid on kind of all the organizations that I or my family have been involved with.
You've worked in countries outside of India. You have properties, like you were saying, in Germany, for example. What global best practices should Indian entrepreneurs and MSMEs pick up on, in your opinion?
So I think the greatest kind of requirement of the day is transparency. And as a result of transparency, accountability, actually. I have done business in other countries, and unfortunately in India, I find that we are not as open with our own employees as we should be. We don't share information as easily. We tend to kind of speak to certain people. We take certain people into our circle and exclude others. And I think that that has to change. That really I think prevents us from growing at the pace that we potentially could be growing at. Accountability is also something that it leads from transparency. So to kind of see clearly where we're doing well, where we're not doing well, sharing that information, even who's doing well, who's not doing well. I think that information helps us give better feedback to our own people, and thus helping them kind of develop and train and as we go along. And I really think those are important factors that any organization can really learn from.
On the Leaders of Tomorrow, we talk to a lot of young entrepreneurs, and you're a young entrepreneur yourself. Has age ever worked against you? Has it been a challenge, or would you say that it has worked in your benefit? And if so, what are one or two of the biggest benefits you think of being able to start out young?
So I think it works for and against you depending on the situation. I have been in a position where I am leading or managing people who are older than me, and in certain situations that can be difficult or awkward. The benefits are also great. I think it gives you fresher perspective. I think it gives you less baggage in a sense of the experience that you may have learned in a very different world, of the 90s, the 80s, and so on and so forth. So I think from my perspective, I feel like as a young entrepreneur, I've been able to learn and grow much faster, possibly than others may have been able to. And you learn from everybody. You learn from those who are older, who are younger, who are Indian, who are not Indian, rich or poor, artist, engineer, whomever. But it's I think you're more open to that generally speaking, if you're younger, and I think I've been able to take benefit in that.
You were talking about hiring and retention of talent earlier. The government is actively pushing Skill India as a program. Even as it is doing that, your industry specifically focuses and relies very heavily on people. One or two of the top things you'd like to advise our viewers in terms of being able to hire the right talent and retain the talent? How easy is it to motivate people? How easy is it to have a culture and ethos of the company and have everyone follow that?
I think inclusivity is really something great. Showing it to communicating with all your people, making them feel like they belong as part of your organization, making them feel like they have a stake in your organization, even giving them a stake in your organization. These are all ways in which you can kind of share the wealth that's created, or the growth of the company, the benefit, whatever that you create within your company. I think these are all important ways in which you can kind of keep your people, build loyalty, build motivation. It's not easy. I think the hospitality industry, we end up losing good people to other industries, frequently, and that's a shame because there is a high demand. There's tremendous area for growth that's there. But it's something that I think that as an industry we really need to talk to each other about more than anything. There are companies that are doing such good work in this, and we need to start talking to each other and really trusting in each other that we need to pull together really as an industry to hold on to and build a greater community of people for ourselves.
I want to talk about fundraising in an industry which is so fragmented at the bottom end of the market particularly. While the government has gone about opening up the hospitality industry, making it more attractive for FDI investments, do you expect there to be a lot of interest, especially as far as MSME entrepreneurs are concerned? What advice would you have in terms of fundraising and making yourself more attractive for receiving such funding?
Of course, I think to make yourself attractive to foreign investors, I think compliance and governance are huge. In India, those are things which do not come so easily, actually, I think. And you have to put in a tremendous amount of energy and effort and time and, just attention to detail to make sure that those things are right. But without those kind of basic fundamentals in place, I don't think that, will be as investable as otherwise possible.
Sure. Since we're talking about government action, I want to talk about GST as well, and GST of course is going to be a game changer for the industry, including yours. How do you propose that entrepreneurs should prepare themselves for it? How are you preparing for it?
So from the hospitality industry, I think it's a fantastic, a really fabulous kind of initiative. I think that, anything with tax consultation and more so in, the ease of logistics, I think that is really going to benefit our industry. I think we need to see how it is, how the whole thing is executed, how it's implemented, to really comment on any specifics of that. But I am looking forward to seeing how that rolls out and to kind of see how we can really make use of it.
Okay. As we're winding down this interview, can you talk to us about what next for your hospitality brand? What do you have on the drawing board, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure. So currently, like I mentioned, we own and operate 4 properties. I expect that number to double in the next 3 years or so. We are currently 200 keys. I can say that we will definitely be around 1,000 keys by 2025. So that's quite exciting. We're growing from, like I said, a small intimate organization to a bit of a larger corporation, which is very exciting for us. So we currently operate 3 properties. One is the Tamara Coorg in Coorg, one is Lilac, which is a service apartment concept in Bangalore, and one is Palma Laguna, which is a small boutique hotel that we operate on the backwaters of Kerala. Additionally, we own a property in Gütersloh in Germany. We have projects in construction in Trivandrum, which is a business hotel, in Kodaikanal, which is another luxury resort, and we have an extension on the hotel that we're doing in Kerala. I have just recently gotten my permissions to do another Lilac, which is a service apartment, and I am very much looking forward to starting a project in Guruvayur, which is a religious destination in South India. In addition, we are looking at further investing in properties in Europe. So there's quite a lot happening. It's quite exciting. We are looking at targeting various segments of the market, not just in the luxury market. We're looking at the middle income with Lilac, and the business segment with the hotel in Trivandrum. We are creating diversity in our portfolio with our properties in Europe. Although we are not currently operating those properties, I would very much like to see us become operators in that part of the world as well in time. So quite exciting, good things are happening with us, growing at a good pace. We have great advisors, it's really good. So
great, so there's a lot happening then. My last question. Sure. One piece of advice that you've received in your professional life that's possibly turned things around for you, or changed the way you think about your career, and if you had one thing that you'd want to leave our viewers with, what would it be?
Sure. So I wouldn't. So it's not. So the thing that happened to me, it's not exactly advice, I would say, but it was a question that somebody asked me that got me thinking, and it is, if you could do anything in the world, what would you do? And that's really what got me started, because it got me thinking about, forget all the kind of the constraints that we put on ourselves, the education that we may have had or whatever it is, and start thinking about what it is that you're passionate about, what it is that you would want to do. And that's that question is what really led me to getting into the hospitality business in the first place, because I answered it that way. I answered it with, I would start a restaurant. And so, I think for all your viewers and all those that are out there, to really think about it. Think about what it is that you really want to do, and step by step, start making your way there. It doesn't mean that you quit your job today and, you go and you start your own business tomorrow. We all have commitments that may not make that possible. But it means that maybe on the side, start doing something small. Like maybe start just researching on the side. Maybe start talking to people, networking with people that will eventually in time lead you to where you want to be. It's never too late to do that. And it will bring you far more fulfillment than whatever you are doing currently, which is possibly not making you the happiest version of yourself.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick break. On the other side, a conversation that Startup Central did earlier with Ashok Soota. To stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on The Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight we're featuring a conversation that Chandra Shrikant did on ET Now Startup Central with Ashok Soota. Ashok Soota is an entrepreneur who's been associated with the IT space for well over 30 years now, first with Mindtree, the company that he helped co-found, and now as the executive chairman and co-founder of Bengaluru-based Happiest Minds. He's also an author and has recently published his book, Entrepreneurship Simplified. Chandra Shrikant spoke to him and asked him about his book and also about tips on how entrepreneurs can stumble upon what they consider as possibly the next big idea, as well as his top 3 tips for entrepreneurs. Here's what he had to say.
There is an entrepreneurial boom in the country, but concurrent with the boom is the fact that there is a huge and a very large number of failures, and then people do tend to struggle for many years. So it is therefore focusing on the fundamentals, and we're saying if you get those basics right, you improve your probability of success. So that is really the whole idea behind the book. Whatever you choose to do, I think must solve a given customer pain point or fulfill a new need, which is an unfulfilled need, which even the customer doesn't know as yet. So that's a new market you're helping to create. And it doesn't matter whether you thought of the idea first or you chose to become an entrepreneur and came in on the idea. But one of the things that my co-author Gopalan and I, and we meet something like, both of us I would imagine meet at least 20 plus potential entrepreneurs with their business plans, is that the ideas are never thought through in adequate depth. Perhaps they zero in on one opportunity far too early, rather than examining 2 or 3 potential areas, then seeing which are the best opportunity. And I think that is really, and then they don't do enough work to validate the idea. So the validation in an expensive way is also very important. I attended the IoT Next yesterday, and there were several hundred startup entrepreneurs just in that one space. Why you mention about the gloom on the scene, every industry goes through its own cycles of valuation. So what was driving the market in the recent past was the e-commerce funding. Now clearly there's a little bit of stock taking. It'll go through its own process of undervaluation in that segment. But there's so many new industries coming up. There's AI, there's robotics, there's cognitive computing, and of course IoT. They're driving demand and creating many new entrepreneurial models. So the first one is really going to pertain to raising of your share capital and equity. And here, one of the most important things we could say is to people that once you've given away equity, you can't get it back. So be very careful how you negotiate those terms. The second one is that, failure is really not necessarily the end of the road. There will be lots of mistakes. I would say the failure is an opportunity to move on and seek success in whichever way, either through re-strategizing, by pivoting your strategy. And the third thing is that you think of strategy not as a one-time exercise. I think there's a startup strategy, there's a scale-up strategy, there's a risk minimization strategy. I'd like to conclude this by saying, people think of entrepreneurs as risk takers. I think it creates the wrong attitude. The job of the entrepreneur is to actually reduce the risk in the venture which he or she is choosing.
Ideation is just one part of being an entrepreneur. Some people in fact say entrepreneurship is 5% inspiration and 95% perspiration. Listen in then to what Ashok Soota had to say when he was talking about inspiration and execution and how the two can in fact go hand in hand.
I wouldn't agree that success is 5% the idea or inspiration and 95% perspiration. In fact, we say very early in the book that your venture is really going to be as good as your idea. So that's a good starting point. If you have the wrong idea, you're going to be struggling with it all the time. Now, when it comes to execution, obviously it's very important to build the right team, and you begin with the founding team. Too many people, because they bootstrap, are struggling with very inadequate teams. So that's, I think, a very important thing. Another important thing about execution is timing. You know, there's the time in which you choose to scale, the time at which you choose to do your acquisitions if you choose to do them, and also the time at which you go to raise funds, because every industry has what I'll call as cycles of overvaluation and undervaluation. So it's important to be able to get the peaks where the valuation levels will be higher.
We often talk about funding and funding related challenges for entrepreneurs, and if you're someone who's faced any such challenges, here is how you can overcome that in the words of Ashok Soota.
Well, you know, we clearly recommend that we prefer people to raise funds externally, not rely on friends and family, and that is because we've seen too many people blow up their entire life savings in trying to get a project out. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful through bootstrapping, and certainly it will take you much more time. So if you have money, because money is the fuel for growth, and you have to manage it well. The other aspect about raising money is that when you go to whether it's an angel or to a VC, and we really say if you can, go straight to the VC, then that VC will help you to modify your idea, adapt your idea. They'll introduce you to their own ecosystem, their own partners. They may also help you in getting talent. So you get a lot of value out of the external investor.
Finally, as a serial entrepreneur who's been associated with companies that have been known for having a strong culture, Startup Central asked Ashok Soota how founders can and possibly should influence and define the culture of companies.
One of the interesting statements we have in the book is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's Peter Drucker, you know, and we also believe that in the end, you see, no differentiator lasts forever. Any business differentiator that you have has a shelf life. Whereas culture is something which is very unique to your organization, and it can be the most permanent differentiator.
Today we brought you tips on how young entrepreneurs are really changing things in the hospitality space. Do remember, if you're a company that wants to be featured on the show, have any query about any aspect of your business, you can write in to us at leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com. You can personally tweet at me. The Twitter handle is Sunanda_J. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT or call us on that number you see flashing on the screen. We promise to have all your queries answered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.